This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Good evening, late. Oh, go ahead, Gary.
Go ahead.
No, it's all you.
All right, well, live from Road America, it is the 2K Skip Barber World Cup here for the super season, essentially, for this season. I'm Gary Weaver, joined by Randy Chenoweth.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, Gary. These cars around Road America are a ton of fun. These little Formula Skip Barber 2000 cars. I mean, this is basically going to be like Daytona for them. Nothing but slipstream as cars are out there on track. On their out laps right now for qualifying.
Everyone trying to get their times quickly in as possible. Some possibly waiting as well as Road America. For me, it's always been an interesting course, especially with that just past the, or just before the Corvette Bridge, rather, where there's just that massive amount of runoff, which is about, in this point with the Skip Barber cars, maybe about 2 car widths of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if everybody's going to be utilizing that as much as possible.
Yeah, the runoff's going to be very, very important here, but I think the name of the game today is going to be slipstream, and we look at some of your track details, of course, this being pretty much the longest track in North America for road courses, nearly 4 miles in distance and quite a handful of turns, and it's a relatively warm session today, Gary. 108 degrees is the track temp. 74 degrees Fahrenheit means it's a relatively cool and comfortable day, though, up here in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. But qualifying, getting ready to start cycling through, and qualifying here not going to be as important, I think, as you might typically see with the long straights. So slipstream going to make it really easy to keep up with cars and likely make passes as well. We're going to see a huge, I think, number of lead changes today.
Oh yeah, slipstream here is going to be absolutely pretty much insane. We have about maybe 2-3 major straightaways here, and kind of the short shoot in a sense between turns 1 and 2. So that's going to be definitely utilized to every single possibility whatsoever. And I would not be surprised if we see 3 wide on the first start here on the back straightaway.
Yep, so right now we're looking around. This is some people who are out there in qualifying. Johnny Gindy is out there on the racetrack right now in the number 18. So he'll work through and down this long sort of second straightaway that leads after turn 3 on the run down through turn 4, the Moraine sweep, which is that little light left-hander, and then down in towards turn 5, the braking zone, and see him a little bit of a wiggle there on the curb there, Gary. That's going to kind of shows like all the difficulty, especially going there through turn 5. You're going down the hill into that braking zone. And you want to bring the car out to the right to get that widest entry that you possibly can. Really easy to get that wrong, and pretty well end up getting the car loose, as we saw Johnny nearly do.
Yeah, it's going to be a really key thing. These things, the one thing I love about these is that you can kind of throw them around a little bit more than pretty much any car that's raced here. So it's kind of a little bit of a buffer in a sense with these Skip Barber cars. You can kind of throw them around and you have a little bit more time to catch it, but well, just like any other car, you get a little bit loose, and well, next thing you know, it's not going to go so well.
So we'll have an idea of what the lap times are going to be. Drivers get 6 minutes to get a lap in this session, and they're only allotted a single lap to get it done. So we'll bring up the side panel here with lap times, and it should hopefully start populating when lap times start cycling through. Let's take a peek at what exactly Johnny's looking at right now on the lap time. Nearly at 2 minutes. Fastest in practice was Johnny Gindy at a 2 minutes 32.529. Simon Edwards not that far off at a 2:32.572, and a couple corners to go, and it'll be interesting to see where Johnny ends up.
It's going to be the final couple of corners. Gets a little bit, that's not going to work out too much. It might, we'll have to see, but that was a little bit too far to the left end. Yeah, it looks like you will actually abandon that lap as the times will start to count down now, so I'm pretty sure he kind of knew about that, but at the same time, he's probably just going to take it in since that was a little bit of a practice lap for him, it seems.
So Greg Seitz, and he's not going to have the time to get another one. 18 seconds only left in the session, so drivers will not get another lap. A handful of drivers we need to see finish it, but I don't think anyone's even close. Jordan Manishinsky's nowhere near. He's actually 1x'd his first attempt. Gustavo Conde as well. Johnny Guindy, of course, as we saw, and Carl Dronke will not get a lap in either. But Greg Seitz, of course, the qualifying times here, Gary, a little bit slower than what we saw in practice because no slipstream, but it's a completely clean track for these guys as we get ready to head down your starting grid.
Yeah, I thought that slipstream is going to be a bit of a game changer here. Well, starting on the front row, it's going to be Greg Seitz and Simon Edwards. Anthony Cat and Julian Offret start in positions 3 and 4. And Edwin Valerino rounding out the top 5. Turan Tran starts in 6th, 7th place. It's going to be Gonzalo Calvo, and then Philippe Lebert, last season champion, starts off in 8th. Rounding out the top 10, John Sully and Sasha Gourlay. Starting 11th is going to be Enzo Canta and Andy Witt in 12th. And then John Larkin in position at number 13, and then Francois Bouillon position at number 14. And we have Perculus and Anopoulos in 15th, 16th. It's going to be Rob Adams, Neil Kemp, and unfortunately I can pronounce his name, but
Etienne Delilovic.
That's definitely a little bit not full name, but Etienne Delilovic starts in 18th, and then Johnny Guindy, Gustavo Condi. It's going to be the 8-11 machine.
George
Matichinsky, thank you, Randy. Mike McCormick and Ron Griffin running a 24-car field. The drivers that could not set a lap time, or chose not to at the very least.
Yeah, so 17 laps going to be on the board for these guys here, Gary. Going to be about, that should run about 40 minutes, I believe, in the distance. So a little bit of a long race for these guys. I don't suspect we'll see these guys on pit road, but we may. But field nearly getting gridded up here. And, of course, if you're in the back of the grid here, Gary, you're starting on that steep hill on the starting grid, which is not great.
That's going to be the most disadvantage that you could possibly have, and Roland Griffin's going to have this. The engines are revving, and we will be down and away right now. Green flag is out. That's going to be a hard charge down to the double right-hander of turns 1 and 2.
So getting a good jump right now, though, is the 74 of Greg Seitz, your pulse, that are able to quickly pull over to the left-hand side of the racetrack and block that run, trying to get as wide as entry as he can in towards turn 1. Hopefield still stacked up 2 by 2 as they work through the first corner. Will they work through cleanly for the first time? No. We got spinners here in turn 1, a couple of cars off. That's turning into 3-4 cars. Oh, big secondary incident as a couple cars get airborne.
That's called Dronke in the background that was flipping upside down. Mike McCormick and Neil Kemp, as well as John Ocken, also getting involved, as we'll take a look at that later possibly, as this is going to still get settled out. But Anthony Cadden, whoa, full course caution actually.
Yeah, we got a full course yellow, and this is going to be really important for them here, Gary, because this should eat a few laps off the board here. But there with that big incident there at the start of the race, race control opting to throw a caution flag, and trying to think when we'd essentially get a restart here, because they're not going to catch that pace car till the end of lap 1. I think the soonest we're going to get this race back started, probably the start of lap 3, maybe even the start of lap 4. So if you're the 74 of Greg Seitz, you're probably loving this, because this takes a couple, 2, 3 potentially laps off the board that you're not having to worry from getting assaulted from behind.
And it's the first time I've personally seen the full course caution thrown here in the 2K World Cup, so it's kind of interesting to see it really utilized. But as far as that goes, if I remember correctly, it's at least 2 laps of pacing, and then on the 3rd lap is when the pace car pulls off, and then you'll actually get back going green. So yeah, probably about coming to lap 4 is when we're going to get the green again.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to look like, and we will rewind these cameras back now that we've had a little bit of time to sort out what transpired. And we'll start here when they're on the grid. You'll hear the res eventually start to build for these guys here in just a couple of moments. And I know one of them, I believe, was this man, the 23, and Neil Camp, I saw get involved with this incident. So there was about half a dozen or so cars, I believe, that got in the mix. So we'll see what exactly happened down on towards turn 1. You see the whole field able to stay stacked up as you would typically expect, especially with the slipstream working down in towards turn 1. A little bit of 3 wide. I think they started with the 229 there in front. But no, actually, the 23 and the 18, they get into each other. May have actually been a couple different incidents that I think may have
Yeah.
happened at once, Gary.
Yeah, I thought it was with Johnny Gindy and Neil Kemp making contact, or Johnny Gindy and Neil Kemp making contact, but that was just one of, I believe, maybe 3 incidences as Sasha Gorel had gotten into kind of a similar move, actually. Tried to move down to the right-hand side, caught the back wheel of Enzo Canta, and then that also collected, looks to be the 17 machine. So unfortunately, may have gotten that a little bit mixed up.
Yep, I mentioned the 229 sort of wiggling back and forth on the racetrack a little bit. We'll watch with them as well as the 924 of Enzo Canta. Let's see, back in towards turn 1, you see the couple cars. Yeah, and there it is, right up there up the inside, just trying to force it up that inside line, Gary, and there's really not a line there that you can really work with. So we'll come back to live pictures now as some cars will be cruising down on towards pit road and see the safety car now officially been deployed for what has been a relatively slow lap due to the safety car of Road America. So across start finish and down the front straightaway, these guys will go. And they'll still be trying to reel that pace car in. Did see lights on the pace car, so that's a guarantee pretty much right there, Gary, that we're getting at least another full lap behind the safety car. We're already working lap 2. That means it's going to be lap 3, probably when we start seeing those lights go out. Maybe even lap 4 potentially. We could potentially get an extra one.
Yeah, and that always is the possibility, although personally I've never seen at least less than maybe 2 full pace laps at least under a safety car for road courses. So it's going to be interesting again to see just how long this will take, but I believe it will be this lap and then lights should be out, if I do remember full course cautions correctly from my experience.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of an unusual thing, of course, to get the full course yellow on the road courses here on iRacing. They're by default completely disabled for the regular service, so if you were to just do a hosted session or an official session around a road course, it's pretty unlikely you get a full course yellow. You'll see yellows, but those are local yellows only in our advisory. You don't really have to slow down for them whatsoever. This, of course, completely different, so it'll be interesting to see as well how the drivers can deal with this, because I think tire pressure, we see the 74 Greg Sykes kind of weaving back and forth. This is going to be an unusual thing, I think, for them in terms of how the tires react, Gary, because the tires are still going to be cold. They didn't really have a chance to get them up to temp. They really had a start, a braking zone, and 2 turns to get the tires up to temp. And besides that, it's going to be 2 or 3 slow laps around this place. You know, typically we're used to only doing a single pace lap. You do a full pace lap around here. So this is going to put the tires in sort of a weird place for these guys.
Yeah, I'm definitely not surprised on seeing at least a few drivers trying to keep those tires relatively warm, at least as much as possible. I know, see Edwin Valerino and some of the Edwards doing that as well. So a few drivers also in the back really just trying to keep these tires as warm as possible, really, given the circumstances that we have here.
So if anyone's curious, we will show who has the fastest lap. Well, it's actually not shown by anybody. I thought that was I was expecting to get a little bit of a giggle there, Gary, and see the fastest lap shown is like a 3:10, a full minute or so nearly off the racing speed. But turns out if there's a caution, our overlay software doesn't even track it. So there was that.
I do have it on my end from a timing screen, and it looks to be Anthony Cat with a 3-minute 16.385.
Flying. So these guys will work around. And we should see, it should be really all eyes on the safety car this next point. I think we have all the cars pretty much out. Nope, actually I take that back. Johnny Gindy, who we actually saw, he was the driver we were following in the qualifying session there, Gary. He's the only car that's going to be not on the racetrack. 24 cars currently, 24 cars started this race. 23 currently out on the racetrack, and Gindy's the only one who won't be returning, or if he does, it'll be at least 1 lap down. So let's see what happens with these guys. They'll come across start finish once again, and it's all eyes on the safety car driver. A couple cars coming down pit road, so fuel might very well be an issue for these guys, Gary. And that's going to be interesting. Could, of course, be repairs as well coming in from some drivers. And the lights on the safety car go out, so we will be green at the end of lap 3.
Yeah, it looks like John Gindy, unfortunately, has taken it behind the wall and chosen to not finish out this event from everything that's really happened. really unfortunate for that 18 because he's been pretty good this season from what I've seen so far, but unfortunately he's decided to really not take any more chances here for Road America.
Yeah, we'll take a look actually at your championship point standings. We bring him up, and you see Philippe Lebert doing very, very good in this championship, and he's really been the kind of the stalwart of the Skip Barber, I think, is Philippe Lebert. You've seen him in everything. Of course, there's a handful of other names that definitely jump out. Twan, Johnny Gindy up in there as well, Carl Drunky. There's a ton of regulars in these cars, but Philippe Lebert, he just seems to be the most active. I think in pretty much any Skip Barber series I've ever streamed, he's been in it. A couple other drivers don't really have that same sort of, they might race other stuff or don't race as much perhaps as Mr. Lebert does.
And Philippe Lebert's pretty much everywhere. He's one of those names that you'd more than likely see occasionally in a certain section of the service, and that's actually kind of cool because it shows how really dedicated that not only he is, but some of these, well, most of these other drivers here for this, I guess in this case, for these Skip Barber cars.
Yeah, it is a very dedicated group. There's a couple, like I said, there's a couple of the names that you will often see kind of branch out. Johnny Gindy's sort of the one, I think, the big one that you'll see him partake in some other cars and whatnot. But for the most part, all these guys, this is all you really see in them. The Skip Barber, maybe a couple of the other lower end open wheel cars, but I can't really think of the last time I saw someone like Greg Seitz, for example, take part in anything that wasn't in the Skip Barber. And just a unique car. It's a lot of fun and puts on some great racing, I think, which we will end up seeing here when we go back to green, because it's about to get hairy, because now these guys are having a rolling start. That makes things a little bit easier on getting the jump, not having to really worry about throttle control or slipping the clutch whatsoever, rolling off the grid, Gary. It's all just wait for that car to come down on down pit road and react to what the cars in front of you do, and hopefully don't get left in the dust by Greg Seitz.
Not only is it a rolling start as well as tires playing into effect, but it's also a slipstream possibility as well. So it's going to be about 3 different factors compared to the standing starts, and I'm kind of excited to see what's going to happen from this, but I'm also kind of nervous because, they're also single file as well, so that could be, that's what, a 4th factor now thrown into this as well.
Yeah, definitely is. So these guys will make the run out of the kink and down towards Canada Corner, hopefully for the final time behind the safety car. It'd be a disaster, I think, if we end up seeing it shown once again or brought out once again. But the field will work down in towards Canada Corner, and we get prepared for this restart. Bring us to it, Gary.
Yeah, just waiting at the moment for that absolutely kind of massive, in a sense, safety car. But right now, Greg Seitz is more than likely looks to be waiting just a little bit, giving that safety car some more space, just so he knows that he has a lot of room to work with, so he knows that he won't get any penalties from race control in the case that he might accidentally pass the safety car as it goes into pit road. So letting the field kind of stack up a little bit, everyone warming their tires a little bit more before we start this race once again. Pace car, safety car in this case, will make the hard right-hand turn down the pit road, and Greg Seitz already down and away, and that means it will be green flag as Anthony Cat goes into pit road for some reason.
I wonder if there's a penalty there with Anthony Cat or something. I'm not really sure, but it's odd that he would wait until the green flag to come down on towards pit road there, Gary. As a cross start finish, the field will go. That's going to give Greg Seitz a little bit more breathing room before the field starts getting to him. In towards turn 1 now for the 2nd time under green flag conditions, working lap 4 of 17. Single filed out through most of your field. You see drivers really maintaining the oversteer through turn 1, and I don't see anyone around this time through that first set of corners.
That single file start did absolute wonders, and Greg Seitz had an impressively amazing start, but all that went away as soon as the first 2 corners hit. And now this is where the slipstream comes into play, and this is where also passing opportunities comes into play, because you have, again, 3 major places, and this is one of them. As Simon Edwards goes down to the right-hand side for Canada Corner, and it looks like Greg Seitz will fall in behind as I'm calling that corner way too early, but first left-hander here onto that big outwards rumble strip.
Yeah, and you see Greg Seitz not even really fighting because of that there, Gary. That's just just how strong the slipstream is going to be around this place today. There's no point in really fighting to hold on to that position because you know there's a very high likelihood that Simon Edwards can take that lead, just cycle in. And we've seen a couple cars like we just saw with Anthony Catt come down pit road. If there's a weird fuel, potential window issue, I'm assuming he didn't have a penalty. But it is weird that he would have come down pit road at the green if he didn't have a penalty rather than serve, maybe fill the car up under yellow. But if that's a potential thing drivers are worrying about maybe trying to turn this into a one-stopper, you definitely want to be the car getting the slipstream rather than the car providing it.
It seemed that he had an 8.5-second pit stop, so that's a little bit uneven in a sense for a penalty. Again, might be fuel related, possibly just trying to see whatever he can do. But right now, what Greg Zietz is trying to do is get the outside position, and that will actually work out. So Simon Edwards doesn't put up much of a fight, as now they'll go down into Canada corner here. And again, the giant rumble strip just giving all of the ample room to run off. And right now, it's as if nothing's even happened from Simon Edwards' pass.
Yeah, we also have side-by-side here in your mid-pack. I believe that's Etchin Delalovic in the 228 you see involved in that scramble as they work through towards this last sequence of corners and back up onto the front straightaway. Up the hill is where these drivers are going to go, and this is going to be where the slipstream is so important because these cars not having a ton of power, that is a really tall hill to climb. Simon Edwards pulls the driver's left down the front straightaway to think about making the move as currently fastest lap held by Philippe Lebert at 2:33.136. That first trip around the racetrack. Carl Dronke is going to take it over, though, as well, as Greg Zietz will lose the lead once again, and Simon Edwards will have it off of one, as this lead group right now, Gary, is about 8 or 9 cars strong.
Yeah, it's John Sully and Andy Witt just kind of tagging in onto the back of this as well, but at this point, it's quite literally follow the leader up until, again, this second straightaway, as we'll head down into turn 5, which is through the Moraine sweep. I actually have figured out which corner is which here at Road America. It's absolutely impressive as Greg Zietz now goes to the right-hand side. Simon Edwards gives him that space, and he'll fall in right behind, although he does give a little bit of space just in case for Adnan Valerino in the moment and the event that he does go there. But again, as if nothing has really happened.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are being really patient with one another. Not even relatively patient, even for the way these fields might run out. They're being pretty calm. I will say a couple big movers and shakers we already have, Gary. We'll bring the graphic up on the left-hand side. But, I mean, Etchin Delalovic and George Majazinski, 18th up to 10th, 21st up to 11th. These guys starting deep in the field, able to work their way up towards into the top 10, nearly the top 10 in the case for George Majazinski. Really quickly here, there. And they're going to be, I think, more than pleased with the fact that they're not buried in the field right now.
Oh, yeah, I think that incident did them a little bit of good as well from everyone else checking up and not really expecting that on the first start. So, Simon Edwards a little bit sideways there and through the first right-hander of the kink, but we'll see if he will go to the left-hand side again. And Edwin Valerino is just watching this happen play out in front of him. So we've had maybe at this point possibly about 5, 6, probably double that lead changes here so far.
So through Canada corner and towards the last couple of corners these guys will have to work with. Quick left hand, a little kink right here. This corner can be a nightmare in some of the quicker cars. The slower cars should deal with it a little easier, but as I say that, see 3 or 4 of them pushing out wide, getting a little bit loose, so they come back down on towards front straightaway. And this is going to be actually a bit of a testing zone for Greg Zietz. Can you get the run off the final corner and beat that race-leading car to start-finish? In this case, the answer to that question is going to be no, and that's very important, Gary. It's always the big topic of can you come off that final corner, get the race lead before start-finish to potentially steal a win away at the line, and it doesn't look like, I haven't seen anyone do it yet. That's going to be an option here is see in the background cars making moves. I think that's the 21 it is, indeed, of Tuan Tron. He made a move up the inside. I think he grabbed 1 spot, maybe even 2.
Yeah, Philippe Lebert had also shuffled Julian Offret back now to as position number 6, and as far as that final run off the corner, Simon Edwards almost had that lead at the start-finish line last time around, but it was by possibly at least the front nose cone being the margin of gap between that. But right now Simon Edwards makes the pass. I'm seeing a very obvious pattern here. Simon Edwards makes the pass here. Greg Zietz will make the pass on the third straightaway in this case. as they go back down to the right-hander. But look at that, Felipe Lebert making moves already. He'll take 2 positions up to 3rd and just nearly squeezes Edwin Valerino off the racetrack.
If you're an opportunistic driver and if you're feeling aggressive, this is the time to do it here, Gary, because if your competitors, if they're just sort of cruising around saying, you know what, I can't really move up anywhere because of the slipstream, just going to kind of hold station and wait for some laps to count down. If you have the speed and if you're aggressive enough, you can make up a lot of space and a lot of positions really in not a very long time just by being decisive, and we've just seen Felipe Lebert do that. He started this lap in P6, and he now finds himself in P3, and they're not even on the back straightaway. They're going to be entering it here in about 5 seconds' time.
And more than likely, we'll see Greg Zietz make a pass for the lead as going way wide as the 21 there off the corner, but falls back into line for now as Greg Zietz, almost a little bit of a loose exit, but he will quickly fly right by Simon Edwards for the time being, and the lead goes back to the number 74, and Felipe Lebert now is just going to be bearing down onto these drivers, as I would not be surprised if Lebert tries to make a double pass in turn 5 once again this time around. Now he's caught up to both Edwards and Zietz.
Thing is, though, are you going to tame down that aggressiveness the closer you get to the race lead, especially knowing that the race leading car really can only hold that race lead for a straightaway, maybe 2, off the final corner and down the front straightaway once again. Let's see if Simon Edwards can reel Greg Zietz in by the time they get to start finish. They'll come up the hill under the Caterpillar sign, and seems like the answer to that question is once again going to be no. Remember, Felipe Lebert, who sits 3rd, is teammates with the man who currently is leading and is currently in the process of losing that race lead to cycle into 2nd. Greg Zietz and Felipe Lebert, teammates Simon, back to the race lead. Moves Greg Zietz back a spot, is actually Felipe Lebert nearly at risk of losing that 3rd spot to Edwin Valerino, but Felipe able to hold on, but for how long? Pushed a little bit wide off turn 1. He won't get it. The 21 of Twan Tron thinking about a move as well. He won't make it stick down the inside in 3.
Yeah, he made a move. At least he made a look down to the right-hand side, but really decided against it and just fell back right into line. But now it's going to be a matter of who's going to make the pass when, in this case for the top 3, because Greg Zietz is going to be making the pass now on Simon Edwards. Will Lebert push it 3 wide? There's a little bit of room. There's an opening for sure, but he decides to fall back. And here comes Edwin Valerino diving down, and it's going to be nearly 3 wide as Felipe Lebert got the right-hand side of Simon Edwards for the moment on corner entry, but there's about 3 passing opportunities there that all did not work out, except for the lead of Greg Zietz.
If you're a fan of pack racing, this is definitely for you, as we're going to be approaching 7 laps completed, 10 laps to go at the end of this trip around the racetrack. But what's interesting to me here, Gary, at the moment is that it seems like that car, once you get up to about P3, you kind of stall out. We've seen Felipe Lebert not be able to make a move on the likes of either Simon Edwards or Greg Zietz when they're out ahead of him. It seems like getting into that 2nd spot is a huge challenge at the moment.
It's a massive challenge for sure at the moment, especially because, well, that position is constantly swapping, and that's really the only time you can make a passing opportunity is when those two, the front 2 runners, are side by side. But someone I think is a little bit, as Greg Zietz gets a little bit into the grass, but keeps it straight for the time being. I think Edwin Valerino is going to be a little bit of a sleeper here for the podium as Simon Edwards goes back to the right-hand side, or left-hand side rather, driver's left-hand side, as falls back into line will be Greg Zietz, and Lebert close but doesn't make a move. But as far as the top 3 goes, I think Edwin Valerino, he's there and he keeps kind of peeking out, and he makes a little bit of opportunities but falls back into 4th. So I think he's going to be a little bit of a sleeper here for the podium position when the final laps come through.
Yeah, I think you're right. As they work themselves in towards turn 17, hard on the brakes, whole field, single file through this 17th and final corner, and hard on the throttle. And we'll bring up the speed graphic so you can see how the speed kind of stagnates as they come up the hill. You see it kind of stops.
Pit road.
Oh, so Felipe Lebert hits pit road. That's a sign right there, Gary, that these guys are having issues with fuel. So you think back to the car we saw come down pit road just as we went to green flag racing. But the thing is, I don't like going to coming down pit road just at the start like that, because all these teams and all these drivers, Gary, they've been getting the benefit of the slipstream, where I believe it was Anthony Cat we saw come down pit road. He hasn't had any slipstream since pitting, so he would have probably lost 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds plus. Let's see where he comes out in comparison to Felipe Lebert, who still sits down there on the pit lane.
Yeah, it was Anthony Cat. 8.5 seconds was the key thing, but Felipe Lebert's been in pit road for now 13 seconds, as you see there, and 13.4 is the number, and loss is going to be pretty close for Anthony Cat. And it looks like he will just barely get ahead of the number 1 here on corner entry.
But think about that, Gary. Felipe Bear, a 13.4 second stop, 5 seconds longer in the pit box. Total pit lane delta time of 44.8. We'll compare that once again back to Anthony Cat. He was 4 seconds quicker, but that's only equaled out to a 1.7 second advantage on the racetrack. That means he's lost nearly 2 seconds just in terms of being on the racetrack. That means these guys, if they should know this, especially you see the likes of Greg Seats there, one of Felipe Bear's teammates, he should be getting some sort of communication. Also, by the way, Tron as well in a similar situation. Those teammates, they should be getting word, hey, I just came out right behind Mr. Anthony Cat. That might give them the sort of the opening or go with the strategy of stay out for a few laps longer to open and elongate that gap they have over Cat.
And they're going to have to really at least maybe short fuel, but not by much. It's going to be close if they do choose to do so. But right now, Greg Seats, oh gosh, nearly making contact with the back, not exactly bumper, but the back portion of the vehicle of Simon Edwards there. That was close on the corner exit. That's for sure enough to really warrant that, that lead. A little bit of a guarantee as well. But now it's going to be maybe another passing opportunity by Simon Edwards to see if he can try and get that lead. But at that point, you have to be possibly at least crawling through closer here to even have a remote chance of getting that slipstream for sure, and at least side by side on corner exit.
Let's see, off the final corner and up the front straightaway. Does anyone make the call to come down pit road? Yeah, it's going to be everybody comes down pit road. Simon Edwards, Greg Seats, Edwin Ballerino, Tron, all on pit road. This man, Julian Offray, he's going to be, I believe, the first car to not come down pit road. Also followed by Gonzalo Calvo. And I like the call these men are making. And talking about the slipstream and the pace differential, this is what I'm talking about. Anthony Cat, his last trip around the racetrack at 233.243. You compare that to Julian Offray, he's continuing on here along with the Gonzalo Calvo behind them. They both did laps in the mid to high 2-minute 32. So a 7/10 of a second advantage is what the slipstream is giving you, and that's what Anthony Cat has been losing on for the last 4 or 5 laps since we went back to green.
Yeah, it's going to be a line. We'll see where he cycles out through, and he's already passing everybody on pit road, so he's not really going to cycle out through, but he will definitely go through everybody for sure. In terms of positioning, a little bit of a wild exit between the 21 and the 74, both coming out at the same time. And it's going to be making for a very, well, Simon Edwards is not waiting whatsoever. He's immediately passing the 21.
Could potentially be a penalty there. I know that the margins for getting an unsafe pit exit penalty here at Road America are very, very slight. Let's see what these drivers do, though, coming up, Gary, because this is going to be really interesting with Julian Offray and Gonzalo Calvo. These guys could have a huge advantage going one full extra lap over the rest of the field if they can come down pit road and take, obviously a lap's less fuel than what everyone else has had to. That could equalize out to a pretty decent sized advantage for them. Also important to note, we have Sasha Gourlay in the background, teammates with Julian Offray, judging by the paint schemes, on the same exact strategy as him. He's not part of the 2-car group we have leading the race at the moment, but he's only about 4 seconds back.
Yeah, 4 seconds can be a lot in a sense, and sometimes it could hurt, sometimes it could harm, but in this case, I'm pretty sure for the 17, it's going to be pretty helpful, as you see him there in the background, for especially pit entry, where, unlike Gonzalo Calvo, not really going to be breathing down the back of anybody's rear wing in this case for pit entry, and really doesn't risk any type of collision whatsoever. So that's also another key thing. Luckily, we haven't seen that as of yet, but hopefully we won't see that for this upcoming pit stop here if these two decide to pit.
Oh, and look at that, long pit stops from a number of these drivers that were on pit road in the second group. You see 14.5 there. We saw 15.7 when we were looking at Greg Seats, 14.5 on Tron. Remember, if we recall back to Anthony Cat, he was on pit road for 18.5. You see Felipe Bear, 13.4. I'm not sure what happened there, is actually your leading group is going to come down pit road. This is going to be a very, very interesting number, Gary, to see what it is that these guys can hit in the pit box in terms of lane time and pit stop time. But I will say it's a little odd to me. If Anthony Cat did a standard fuel fill, why would he be 5 seconds quicker than Felipe Bear and then a further 2 seconds ahead of everybody else? I don't think anyone is really missing the fuel fill point by that much. I have a feeling Cat had to serve a penalty, and he might be back down pit road here shortly. in order to get fuel. You see Julian Offray 13, 14, 15. This is more in line with what we've seen from everyone else.
That's really interesting. So it might have been a penalty, but the thing is, the 8.5 seconds is kind of what threw me. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense for a penalty, but it'd be more of a little bit of an even number, as it's a mad scramble on pit exit. Oh my goodness, everyone was a little bit, not exactly all over the place, but at the same time, it was just well, I guess in that case, a mad scramble. It was just everybody all over whichever lane on pit exit. It was very, very wild and unorthodox, but luckily somehow everybody makes it through for the most part, as at least the only drivers that really have yet to pit now are, actually, now that I say that out loud, it's going to be Gustavo Condi, maybe, and Ronan Griffin, but they pit during the caution, it seems.
Yeah, so I think they might have to come down pit road regardless, though, because they're still well down the running order. Gustavo Conde was 3 seconds behind. Let's see, where are your race leaders? Sasha Goro. Okay, no, actually, take that back. He's a good ways out ahead. I imagine he'll likely have to come down pit road still here, Gary, because if he could have just made it to the end under the caution, I feel like we would have seen a much larger chunk of these big names come down pit road saying, you know what, we can definitely make it here under green. That said, still probably a good call to pit under the yellow. That's, potentially going to shorten your fuel fill when you eventually do have to come down pit road and pit. But it's not going to be as huge of an advantage, I don't think, as what we've likely seen. I will say someone who's actually made a surprisingly amazing move was actually Felipe Bear by pitting early here, Gary, because he was sort of able to come out and have Anthony Cat slipstream for a while. This has put Felipe Bear, if Anthony Cat has to come down pit road again, Felipe has sort of gotten sucked away from the rest of the field. You look at the likes of where Greg Seitz and Simon Edwards here, it's a pretty sizable gap back to that group. You see these guys getting ready to make a move on one another. Ooh, Simon Edwards slips just ahead of Greg Seitz, but you see the margin 3 seconds between Felipe Bear and Simon Edwards. If and when Anthony Cat comes back down pit road again, that'll give Felipe Bear, I think, pretty much having broken the slipstream.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird, and I'll see if Anthony Cat decides to go to pit road. He does, so I was about to bring up as well before Condi and Griffin also went to pit road that their pit stops were 7 and 7.1 seconds respectively, so that may have been not a penalty, but maybe a little bit of, actually for Anthony Cat, I'm not exactly sure. We'll have to really find out afterwards if we do have a chance, but other than that, though, very odd situation, as those are definitely numbers more in line with pit stops that we've seen.
Yeah, so back on towards the racetrack now. Cars that were staying out pretty much have all come down pit road. Gustavo Conde on pit road, Ronan Griffin in there as well. That has cycled this man, the one of Felipe Bear, into the race lead with a couple of a second margin over his teammate of Greg Seitz. We'll check the gap once again, 2.7. So the gap is, however, coming down a little bit here, Gary. Of course, this group, they are slipstreaming with themselves, and actually watching the 52, he may have been shoving the 74, Greg Seitz, just a little bit. They'll pull out side by side, but with them leapfrogging like this, they're not really racing each other hard. The car is leading the train. When that car behind gets the slipstream and gets the run, they're just letting that lead car jump right on past them when they're jumping back in line. That means they're not costing themselves any time, and they're just gaining time for the slipstream down the straights.
And they're kind of slingshotting their way back up to Felipe Bear, and I'll be surprised if they would catch him at least in maybe a couple laps time if this continued, not exactly strategy, but more method, if you will, because just about half a straightaway that distance there to Felipe Bear, or at least 2.8 seconds, nearly 3. But this does keep up. I'd be interested to see if this actually either helps them out or not so much.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when and how long they're going to be able to get up there, because this is going to be very, very important. Off the carousel and down towards the kink, this group will go, and we'll start keeping a very close eye on what the gap is lap on lap. Greg Seitz, and from what we've seen, should get the run here on Simon Edwards and be able to make the move in towards Canada Corner. Here comes the run to the left-hand side. It goes Mr. Greg Seitz to the right-hand side, Simon Edwards. But actually, this time, Greg wants to hold on to it. I think Simon didn't get a great run coming off the kink there, Gary. So he'll hold on into that third place position, second in line of this train of cars for now. It'll be 6 laps to go at the stripe.
I was looking at the time there just before they got into the back straightaway in the kink. It was about 2.866 or so seconds. And now it's actually, well, Ryan was about to mention it was back to 2.8 solid. It's made its way down to 2.766. So it's really hovering around the 2.8 second mark.
So cross start finish, our lap counter will update to 6 laps to go. Side by side for second. Again, Greg Seitz looking up the inside of Simon Edwards, trying to hold on to that position. He won't be able to do it. Simon will cruise on by into that second spot. The margin for Philippe Lebert at the stripe was 2.825 seconds. That was behind Greg Seitz, however. You can probably take a tenth or two out of that, though, Gary, because, of course, now it's Simon Edwards who's in second and has gotten by. We'll bring the graphic up on screen. The margin for him, 2.483. So 4 tenths they found from the start finish, then just through turns 1 and 3.
That's a lot of time in a sense, especially with this, as now again making that pass on the right-hand side. Greg Seitz and Simon Edwards will fall right back in behind as Julian Offret breaking a little bit, possibly a little bit early, as Tuan Tron had to make a little bit of a move to the left-hand side to avoid running into the back of Offret, but this actually might be remotely working just a little bit.
And now, when do you get aggressive if you're some of these guys here, Gary? If you're Julian Offred, if you're Tuan Tron, if you're Edwin Ballerino, we've seen that second place inline car, that third place inline car kind of stalls out and can't really jump for position. And we've seen that now twice. We saw that before we saw the cycle of pit stops, the third place car just unable to really make any moves. And we're starting to see it again. Julian Offred just hasn't even had an opportunity to make a move on Greg Seitz or Simon Edwards.
None of that, where he's chosen not to, but yeah, he's kind of really, it's like I believe this might be the actual, kind of an oval version of 3 wide's middle, when you're in the middle 3 wide on oval, is that you really don't have anywhere to go and you're kind of stalled out there. Next thing you know, you kind of get sucked back, and then, well, next thing you know, you have 2 cars in front of you, so this might be a similar situation for Julian Offret. He kind of gets the run here, but the moment they're done making the pass, it's kind of into the corner, so it's a little bit of a disadvantage and advantage at the same time for that 33.
To see Simon Edwards back to that second place position, leading this train of cars. 5 laps to go is what we'll get the window for at the start finish line, and we'll see what the gap was. Again, just to remind you, 2.825 was the margin between Philippe Lebert and Greg Seitz last trip around the racetrack. Off the final corner, you see Greg Seitz all over the back of Simon Edwards. He'll be making the move soon, but at start finish, that gap is going to update to 2.413. So 4 tenths of a second is what they found over Philippe Lebert that time. Greg Seitz this time will cycle back into the into the second spot.
And at this point, it's kind of a very interesting strategy that kind of worked for the time being for Philippe Lebert. And still looking at the moment, that gap is kind of closing a little bit, but it's also hovering again. So it's really just a matter of time, quite literally, to see if this will continue to work out. It's also a matter of time to see when exactly is the moment that the gap is close enough for that slipstream to work.
So here we go. Simon Edwards once again getting knocked on the door by Mr. Greg Seitz to get up in a second on the rundown in towards turn 5. And actually, Greg won't be able to make the move, and he'll settle back in line. So Simon Edwards will hold on to that second spot for now. And it's important to remember here, Gary, that first place and currently third place car, Greg Seitz, those two are teammates. So how closely are they going to work together? I know that there's not huge team orders amongst those drivers at that group, but you know that they're going to work together to a certain extent.
At some point, they'll definitely want to work together. I'm pretty sure that maybe at one point Greg Seitz will actually have to take a defensive line, and a little bit later maybe kind of stall the momentum out of Simon Edwards somehow, some way, without really making big detriment to his race or the race of himself as well. Really, it's just, again, a matter of really waiting to see when that will be the case. And I think, at least at the start-finish line, they'll have another 4 tenths just about on Philippe Lebert, looking at the live timing.
And there is going to be a point, Gary, where they start making massive gains of Simon Edwards. I think a little bit loose coming off the King. That might open up the door for Greg Seitz in towards Canada corner, and he's nearly along by. He actually had the short run through that sort of long left-hander that drags you into Canada corner, so he's going to get by. But there's going to be a point when they get to about a second and a half on back of Philippe Lebert, they're going to start feeling his slipstream, and when that happens, This group's going to go from reeling in from about 0.4 of a second per lap, probably to closer to about 2 seconds a lap.
Oh yeah, more than likely, especially again with that slipstream and how we've seen it affect these drivers here. That pole is it takes a while a little bit, but once you get past the break-even point of speed, it really starts to pull in, and you can see that right there from Simon Edwards as he makes the left-hand pass again on Greg Zietz here. At the start-finish line, Greg Zietz will slot back into line right about here, and it's about another 0.4 or so, just about off of the lead, off of Philippe Leber's lead.
Yeah, last lap it was 2.483. This lap, the gap at the line, 2.133. Simon Edwards back up into that second spot, though. Greg Zietz, who held that second spot by 7/1000ths of a second that trip around the racetrack and across the timing beam. Philippe Lebert that time off of turn 3, a little bit wide, so maybe handing a little bit of time to this group, but you can see that margin is not visually coming down a huge amount lap on lap on lap, but they are getting closer and closer and closer in towards turn 5. Julian Offray, by the way, someone that Simon Edwards has to worry about. He was very close, but actually sort of backs off it in the braking zone there, Gary, and that's interesting to see. It seemed like the 33 was right up the back of the 74 of Greg Zietz entering that braking zone into the corner there at turn 5, but I think maybe braking a little bit early and open the door for Simon Edwards to slot back into. You'd think with 4 laps to go, maybe those drivers would not be working with each other quite so nicely, but I think they're still thinking, I think everyone in this line right now is thinking they have a chance to win if they play nicely for a couple more laps and reel in Philippe Lebert.
At this point, it's a matter of they can see that gap is visually closing, and at this point, it actually is closing, just closing a little bit. So I believe maybe on the front straightaway they'll have just a bit of slipstream. But for someone like Julian Offray, like you mentioned, is that he's maybe trying to kind of practice to see if he does have a little bit of more room to work with in terms of slipstream, like how much he can really run down a driver in front of him, whether it be Greg Zietz or Simon Edwards in that braking zone. But at that point, it's really, at this point right now, it's a matter of really just saying, oh, you know what, it's not really worth it, as well, Simon Edwards decides that right now as he was about to make a move on Greg Zietz for Canada corner, but decided against it as he was way too late.
3 laps to go is what they will see at the start-finish line through this little left-hand kink at the end of the racetrack. And of course, this right-hander, this is one of the most difficult corners on the racetrack. You wouldn't think it, but that corner is so difficult to get right and carry speed. Off into turn 1 is actually drivers having to come down pit road once again.
Multiple drivers, actually. So at the oh my goodness, well, never expected this, but for Philippe Lebert, it kind of makes sense. He was running out in front without any help whatsoever, both Zietz and Edwards and the 21. And it's just those 4 drivers from what I'm seeing at the moment.
Now, actually, this begs the question: if Anthony Catt can Anthony Catt make it to the end? He came down pit road 2 laps later than most of the rest of the field did. That was lap number, his in-lap was lap number 10. We'll compare that to Philippe Lebert, whose in-lap was lap number 7. So Anthony Catt may have actually just made his short pit stop off of the yellow and then made his second full pit stop. I haven't seen a double pit stop race in Skip Barber's in quite a long time, so apologies for us not picking this up. You see cycling back in line, Philippe Lebert nearly getting caught out by the 39, but I believe Philippe is going to be the first one off of pit road. Greg Zietz just behind will technically be second in line amongst those drivers, and the 21 of Twantron there as well. And that's Roman Griffin. Remember, we saw him doing a slightly different strategy earlier there, but the question is he going to owe us another pit stop? That's actually still up in the air, Gary, because he pit on lap 10 as well, the same as Anthony Catt.
And Anthony Catt could not really catch up to those drivers that were exiting pit road. It seems to be a little bit of a quick field stop. That time for Philippe Lebert was 9.1 seconds, and really the only closest driver to Anthony Catt is Simon Edwards, who pit for 10.6 seconds. So it's really just a matter of hoping that somebody messes up there. But for now, I think Anthony Catt might be a little bit stranded for the time being.
So pit stop drama is cycling through here. This is going to be the final time, of course, that drivers get the opportunity to come down pit road. Of course, 3 laps remaining You'll have, of course, this opportunity come to 2 laps to go, and then starting the final lap, you can come down pit road, but you're not going to want to do it on the final lap, of course, unless you're Michael Schumacher trying to serve or unserve a strategy. The 11 car of Edwin Valerino, he'll cycle in what is, at the moment, the race lead around the 33 of Julian Ofred. But I guess the second question we have to ask, Gary, is there any way these guys could maybe stretch this fuel load?
I mean, there kind of is at the same time, but really there also is not, because everyone is running full throttle, even in the slipstream. But that's what at least we can all assume just from the runs that we've been seeing. And it looks like Valerino is going to be the only one to go into pit road. He had a taste of it, but now he'll really have to fall back, unfortunately. So now it's going to be Alfred and Calvo that are staying out. Looking back at other drivers, 19's going to pit road, Andy Witt's going to pit road, Enzo Canta as well. I'm still waiting to see if anyone else. John Ogden goes to pit road. Francois Boulien took the draft, but he stays out. Delilovic also pits, so it's pretty much the second half of the field that really hadn't pit that time around.
So let's see, Edwin Valerino with 2 laps remaining will cycle down in towards his pit box. You see a handful of cars in the background as well. I don't believe those drivers will be a factor. Let's see what the fill time is for Edwin Valerino, knowing he only needs 2 laps of fuel, 7.1 seconds. Let's compare that to what Philippe Lebert did, 9.1. So he's 2 seconds quicker, and he's going to come out. I think he'll be behind, but it's not going to be by a whole lot. Question is, will he be able to maintain the slipstream? And look at this, we have 3 teammates between Lebert, Seats, Antoine Tron lined up nose to tail, with them now working their penultimate lap, as now it's going to be all eyes on this duo. If Julian Offering and Gonzalo Calvo get the fuel mileage, they can potentially pull off a cheeky one.
Yeah, they could, and now it's going to be a matter of, again, back to the fuel savings. That do you really want to run half throttle behind somebody that you're pretty much stuck behind? Because at this, well, not stuck behind, but more rather, the only person that's really giving you this a little bit of a buffer here to save fuel, because that half throttle, it could amount to a lot, but that depends on how often you've been saving that half throttle and how often you've been doing that. For Calvo, it just depends. We'll have to see if he decides to full throttle it and really make that run up. But right now, as they come off that corner, the carousel, doesn't really look like it by much, but he's slowly reeling in Alfred.
I will say, though, Gary, I'm not a huge fan. If they can't make it, I would have rather come down pit road this lap or the lap previous, because I would have wanted to be able to come down pit road, get my service, cycle back out on the racetrack, and then have a couple of laps to be able to jockey and fight for position. If they can't make it to the end from here, all that's going to happen is they're going to come down pit road, they're going to fill the car up, and of course, you know, it'll be the same amount that they have to fill the car up. It's 1 lap of fuel, regardless of if you come down 3 laps ago or if you come down now, and they're only going to have a single lap, one of which will mostly not even be up to speed to potentially race people. So let's see what they do. One driver is looking to pit road. No, neither of them are. They're going to try to stretch it.
Now it's a matter of who exactly is the person that has enough fuel to make it to the end. Will Calvo wait until that final corner? Because we've seen that the run off the final corner could only really be done once as the white flag is out this time around. But, I mean, Sound Edwards still couldn't really beat Greg Zeitz to the line at the time that he was making that pass. He just barely got to the side, but really not enough. Sasha Gourlay is next in line if anything were to happen to these front 2.
Yeah, remember, Sasha Gourlay, he's sort of settled off the back of the likes of Ofray and Calvo, and Francois Boulien, he's going to settle into 4th. 5th is going to be Mike McCormick, so we might get like an entirely new top 5 here, depending as they run. Look at the racing here amongst these drivers as well. It's intense, but I'll be honest, we need to watch this little scrap between these 2 drivers. Gonzalo Calvo in the 2nd spot. Julian Ofray leads down in towards turn 5 for the final time. Ofray won't even have a look, and that tells me the fuel is still very, very tight for this duo here, Gary, because I think if you would have been good on fuel, you'd have been assaulting the back of that 33, I think, at every opportunity, trying to force a mistake. Now, they work through in towards the hurry downs through that quick right-hand flick, and then down the hill to this 90-degree left-hander working into the carousel for the final time. When do you make your move if you're the 225? Is it indicated a corner?
At this point, that final moment would be just off of this carousel. Just full throttle it, hope for the best, and you can really stick it, because that uphill is a little bit of a battle when coming off the final corner, especially with that low speed, and it does take a little bit. You get to the entry of pit road, till they make a move. But right now, it's going to be, at this point, maybe a drag race. 225 is closing the gap just a little bit, lets off, but will it be enough? I don't think he'll really have enough. He's closing the gap again, but he's letting off. He's holding off. He's about half throttle. He's waiting. So that shows he might not have enough fuel, or he's waiting until the final corner.
Fuel a huge issue through as they work through in towards Canada corner for the final time. The 33 of Julian Offray leads. We've not seen a single car come off the final corner and lead a lap through this entire 17-lap contest, but fuel is a big question for them. A little bit wide with Julian Offray at the penultimate corner through the final right-hander. If they run out of fuel, it's an uphill run to start finish. Julian Offray's wide. That's going to open the door surely for Gonzalo Calvo up the front straightaway for the final time. It's going to be a photo finish, but at the stripe along the right, which side of the racetrack, the 225 will do what no one else has done. Gonzalo Calvo will steal the race win at the line.
That was absolutely incredible. I think Sasha Gourlay is also going to make it. He does have enough fuel to make it. Francois Boulien as well will make it in 5th, but there's still an entire battle going on for at least P6. Felipe Lebert and Greg Zietz, as well as Tuan Tran and Alan Valerino for other positions, as there's a slow car on the track. Yeah, it's Greg Zietz who's out of fuel. Greg
Zietz out of fuel. We saw that 92 in the background out of fuel as well. Couple cars end up tumbling because of it. Drama up and down the racetrack. That's Francois Boulien. We mentioned him. He's upside down. Edwin Valerino, another one. So a couple drivers risking it and others cycling through across start finish now. Huge drama at the end of this. And look at a number of these cars. They're not even making it to the exit of the pit wall. They're so tight on gas.
My goodness, I never thought it would actually come down to that much of a fuel run. That was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, great race from these guys. So, Gary, what a run for all 23 of these drivers. And let's take us down this running order. And man, oh man, this was great.
Yeah, an absolutely incredible run coming down to fuel by the end. Results here, Gonzalo Calvo stealing it by 0.024 seconds, just making it out by Julian Offray, as Sasha Gourlay finishes 3rd, Felipe Lebert 4th, and Tuan Tran finishing at 5th, Greg Zietz, Simon Edwards, Neil Kemp, Anthony Cat, and Roland Griffin rounding out the rest of your top 10 respectively. As we move on now to 11th, Enzo Canta, Mike McCormick, Andy Witt finishing 11th, 12th, and 13th, John Sully 14th. 15th place is going to be Etienne Delilovic. John Hawkin finishes 16th, Perkulos Abinopoulos 17th, Gustavo Condi, George Matsukine, and the rest of your field as well, rounding out this 24-car field, as John Gindy unfortunately had to retire very early on.
Very unfortunate there for Mr. Johnny Gindy. It would have been great to see him be a part of this, and I have to apologize for everyone, but we have to cut our coverage a little bit short due to some producer shortages on our end. We have to jump over to another session. It will be the bump day qualifying for the open wheels the open wheels 500-mile race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, presented by Mitchell Transmissions. Coverage for that will begin in approximately 2 minutes time, so keep an eye out for that on the iRacing Esports Network. But we thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you all enjoying the event, and we hope to see the rest of you next time. Bye-bye.